So from time to time I'll get questions on my car videos asking me, where do I go to learn about cars, or how do I know so much about cars? And to be fully honest, it's a learning experience, and there's still a lot of things that I've yet to learn. Take my last brake job video for example. It might sound like I know what I'm talking about, but when it comes to the actual application of that knowledge, that might not always be the case. If you watch that video, you might remember that I was trying to install these 15-inch wheels in the back, but I couldn't get the brakes to bleed correctly because of what I thought was a leak, so I ended up putting the other brakes back on so I could go out and take pictures. Well, it turns out that wasn't the problem, and I actually made a big mistake. Right about here. And no, it's not that face, that would be a second problem. It's right here. And to give you a better view with more light on the other side, it's the same problem. And it completely explains why no matter how much I bled the brakes, it still felt spongy and felt like there was air trapped in the line, which mistakenly made me think that there was a leak. So I just want to give a huge shout out to Moses E, who actually saw the problem and caught it and let me know. And he's exactly right. The problem wasn't that my calipers were leaking, it was that the calipers were backwards, causing me to not be able to bleed all the air out and leading to that spongy pedal feeling. Now if you remember the diagram from last time, when your foot presses on the brake pedal, it's that fluid pressure in the lines that causes the squeezing action that causes you to slow down. And that's because fluids as compared to gases are what's called incompressible, whereas the molecules in a gas are far apart. The molecules in a liquid are so close together and so closely packed that there's really no place for them to squeeze even closer. And so when your foot presses on the pedal, the fluid molecules can't really go anywhere except press against each other, which causes your brakes to squeeze. Now the problem arises when you have gas in your lines along with the fluid. Because the gas molecules are so far apart, instead of transferring the force of you pressing on the brake pedal, all it does is bring the gas molecules a little closer together. It doesn't transmit any force at all, leaving you with a spongy feeling pedal and severely reduced braking power. Which is exactly why they make so many different grades of brake fluid. If you remember, any fluid can become a gas if it's just heated enough. And if the heat from your brakes is high enough, say if you're trying to slow down from 180 miles an hour, the heat can cause the fluid in the lines to boil, turning it into gas and then creating the problem that I talked about earlier. And so the difference between the different grades of brake fluid is the boiling point. And so the higher the dot grade, the higher the boiling point, the less likely it'll turn into gas. Now the other way that gas can get into the brake lines is in the form of air. Normally, from the brake master cylinder all the way to the caliper, it's a completely closed system with no air. But when you do what I did and disconnect the line from the caliper, you introduce air into the lines. And so to get rid of the air, on the back of every caliper there's a bleeder screw, and if you just loosen the bleeder screw and press on the brake pedal, it'll cause the fluid to get pushed out and the air along with it. And this is called bleeding the brakes, and this is something you need to do every time you disconnect the lines from the calipers or introduce any air into the lines in order to restore that firmness you love in the pedal. So how does having the brake calipers installed on the wrong side affect this, and why did I have spongy brakes even after bleeding the lines?
Basically happened was last time when I put the calipers on, I didn't pay attention to what direction they were, and it's actually pretty obvious. It's printed right here. This side is L, and if you look at this one, this side is R. So I had them actually installed this way and backwards basically, and if I had just paid attention to these letters, I would have put them on the right side. But the other way you can tell is what I did last time was when I installed this one on the right side of the car, basically opposite, you look at this bleeder valve. This bleeder valve is supposed to be up. So if I put it on the correct side, the left side, then the bleeder valve is up. But if I put it on the right side, then the bleeder valve is down. Basically what was happening is once I connected the brake fluid line, the brake line here, what I thought when I was bleeding the fluid out with Rachel, there was fluid coming out from the bleeder valve, and I thought that that was that had purged all the air out. But what was actually happening was it was pushing fluid out, but all the air was trapped up. Right? Just think about if you take like a bottle and with the cap on, if you flip it upside down, the air goes up. Right? So the air is still stuck in there, and it's not being pushed out because air is lighter than water, and air is lighter than brake fluid, so it's going up. And so fluid comes out, and I thought I was done. But instead, what I should have been doing was flipping to the other side, and air would have come out instead of fluid. And so that's the way that you purge all the fluid out. So make sure you install your brake calipers on the correct side.
And so that's kind of the point that I wanted to make in this video. You know, when you ask about how can I learn about cars and how do I know so much about cars, a lot of my experience has come from just trying things myself, from making those mistakes myself, and just asking other people. These days with Google and the internet, the best way to learn is to just go on forums. I think every type of car out there, every model, every make, has their own particular forums. For Supras, it's Supra forums. And on those forums, you have a wealth of information and a pool of resources of people that are just as passionate about those cars as you are. And you can just go and feel free to post any questions, and there are people that are there that are more than willing to help out. I mean, on On these forums, I found procedures fully documented with pictures and directions on anything that you could want to do, and people put these things out for free just to help others. That, combined with a live community of people that are just as passionate, that are willing to help answer any questions that you might have, armed with some tools, maybe a technical repair manual, some common sense and fearlessness, you could really conquer anything you'd want to do on your car.
So normally when you change the brake pads on a one piston caliper, it's done this way. Instead of taking the entire caliper off, a one piston caliper, all you need to do, since there are no pins, this is like a pretty typical setup for a one piston caliper. So what you do is you have these sliding pins that the caliper slides on, because you only have a piston on one side. And so when that piston pushes on the one side, this whole assembly slides on the caliper bracket through these pins. And so what you do is on the bottom here, there's a 14 millimeter bolt, which is a lot looser than your big 17 millimeter caliper mounting bolts. But all you do is you back it off. And then what happens is once you back it off, the whole caliper opens up like a clamshell. And then here, if you come over here, you can see the caliper's piston, single piston, exposed right here. So basically what it does is when you push on the brakes, these are like standard brakes with one piston. This piston pushes against this brake pad right here. And when it pushes against this brake pad, this whole assembly will slide. So you see how I'm pushing it? So you see how this whole assembly can slide? So this piston right here will push. This piston right here will push, and then this whole caliper assembly will slide. And then basically you have another brake pad on this side that squeezes. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to install this other brake pad. And so you can kind of see how this is done. I take these two spring pins out, right? And then this wear indicator goes up. And then this whole assembly just fits into here like this. See that? Like this. And then what you do with these two is you just stick these into these little holes. Like this. Like that. And these two go in like that. So it kind of holds them there. And then this whole clamshell assembly, just like this. And then you put your 14 millimeter bolt on the sliding pin back on. And then tighten it down.
So all that's left now is one last brake bleed and we're done. And what you should see this time versus last time is at the beginning of the brake bleeding process, when I crack open the bleeder, you'll see lots of air coming out as the fluid pushes the air out, and then eventually it'll become fluid only. Because this time the bleeder is up, so the air has a chance to escape.
Okay, push it and hold it down, okay? There comes some air. Alright, go ahead and lift up. Push down again. Alright, lift up. Push down again.
So again, thanks for watching this video, and thanks to Moses E again for pointing out my mistake. For those of you that want to learn more, go ahead and just search it up. If you want, leave me a comment, and I read all the comments, and I've seen people asking for videos on how to drive stick. I'm gonna make that video, and also had an idea for a video about how to ride a motorcycle, so I'm gonna be coming up with that soon too. And so for anything else that you guys want to watch, please just leave me a comment, let me know. I always appreciate it. I always love reading your guys' comments. So thanks again, and I will see you guys soon.